What's up guys, this is Tcg Sam here, and welcome to my 2020 December format meta-analysis. So the new Banlist just dropped, and I've been thinking a bit, and I put some of the top most represented decks, the most common decks you'll probably see here, and I would just be discussing where I think each of them will go in this tier list. So of course, as you guys all know, the Banlist, the most notable hits were the Dragon Buster Destruction Sword and Linkross, and that really did affect quite a few meta decks. So yeah, but without further ado, before we begin, I just want to ask you guys to please remember, leave a like if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel, and tell me down below what you think of the tier list. But yeah, like I said, without further ado, let's get straight into it. So the first one is going to be Invoked and Invoked builds. So like, you can play like Invoke Dogmatica, Invoke Shaddoll, stuff like that. In my opinion, I think Invoke falls into tier 2. Yes, Alistar is a very, very powerful card, but the thing is, it is a little bit inherently slow because you're normal summoning for one fusion monster, and that takes up your normal summon. And the thing is, like, the most powerful fusion monster you're pretty much making turn 1 is a Mechaba, which, yes, is an Omni Negate that banishes, but you need to have other cards in your hand. Overall, though, not a terrible deck, of course. Like, if the format gets a little slower, it can definitely be tier 1.5. But this is where I think it falls for now. At Emancipator, they lost Linkross, but they still have, like, Halk Fibrax. Although the Linkross kind of just did help them quite a bit with their combos. Now, I think I'm going to have to put them in Rogue. So the thing is, they haven't really been represented either, and I don't think they're going to begin getting represented now, because the build that's running around now is, like, one that's like focused on bringing out like Leonites and Dragoon and like Quackimary Guardian from the graveyard. And while that's not bad, taking away Linkross from this deck definitely took away a lot of its power. Like, how can summon a tuner from deck, but like now you'd have to play the Auroradon combo, or you can't really do anything with it after. Next is Prank Hits. I'm gonna put Prank Hits in tier 1.5. Personally, I feel like Prank Hits, while it's a pretty good deck. It's like one card engines. The thing is, like, if that one card engine gets like stopped by like an Ash Blossom Skullmeister or something, then they're just in a really bad spot and have to pass unless their hand is insane with like the other Frankits and like their fusion spell. So I think putting Frankits in tier 1.5 is fair. But the thing is, it's definitely higher than tier 2 and Rogue in my opinion, because it doesn't really initially lose to Veiler or Imperm on its normal summon or something. It just loses to Ash and Skullmeister when they Imperm their affecting graveyard after they make the Meow Meow. Of course, their fusion monster Battle Butler is very, very powerful. It's like a Raigeki. And then you also have their Heavy Storm Link 4. The fact that it has access to those toolbox cards, very, very good. And of course, it's able to play like hand traps and all that. So I think definitely tier 1.5, like on the border of tier 1. But I think the biggest weakness of it is that initially to start off it plays, it needs that one card to go through. Next is like the Buster Whelp engine. So like obviously this isn't a deck on its own, but I feel like the Buster Blader engine with like Eldritch, with like Dogmatica, with Dragoon stuff, I think that's like tier 1.5. Buster Whelp is very, very powerful. Hitting Dragon Buster Destruction Sword did nothing to this engine. You're still able to pretty much make a one card combo with like a Skill Drain and like with the Skill Drain fusion and the Buster Dragon. So like honestly, I think this is quite powerful. The only problem I see with it is potential lack in consistency, because you only have 3 copies of the Buster Whelp for your one card combo. You don't have like a way to search it as far as I know. And just drawing the trap alone, like you have to draw other cards with it to actually be able to combo. So I think like the pile glue deck where there's like Dogmaticas and Eldritch or whatever, and here's tier 1.5, not too bad. Just a little bit behind Prank Hits. Next is Dinosaurs. Dinosaurs thrive in a meta where there's more combo in my opinion, because it's very, very good at breaking combo boards. But the thing is, like in a control meta, Dinosaurs might not actually be as good in my opinion. And the way things stand now, I predict that there will still be some combo, but there'll be noticeably less, as I feel people are switching over to Dogmaticas and stuff. So I'm actually gonna keep them in high tier 1.5, low tier 1. I think putting in tier 1.5 is fair, because I honestly think that if if the meta shapes out correctly, they can definitely be tier 1. But like the way I'm thinking the meta will turn on right now, I think tier 1.5, high tier 1.5, low tier 1 is definitely a good place for Dinos. Of course, still a very, very powerful deck. Nexus Shaddolls and like Shaddol variants with like Vogue, Dogmaticas, all that. Put that in tier 2. The thing is, yes, Window's very, very good card, but like I predicted, I think we're going to be going into more of a control meta, so I think it's necessary to put it down in tier 2 because Winda isn't as good as against those decks. Of course, you can still make powerful fusion plays with Schism and Construct, but for now, I think it rests in tier 2. Next is Zeus. Zeus include like Zodiac Dogmatica, Zodiac Eldritch, Pure Zeus. Personally, I feel like Pure Zeus goes in tier 1.5, but I'm gonna put the other Zoo variants in tier 1. Like very, very like low tier 1 in my opinion. I think the problem with Zeus is they don't have enough like main deck monsters to start their plays. If you max out on them, I believe you get around 13, maybe 14 Zeus max or something. And like that, if you don't draw a Zoo and you're playing something like Pure Zoo, you just pretty much have no plays. If you're playing like Eldritch or Dogmaticas, you have to rely on the other engines, and the other engines are just like pretty lackluster on their own. Like they work very well when paired with other things, but if you just normal summon a Ecclesia or set like Conquistador, Scarlet, like that's not really that good. But obviously because Zeus can make Zeus, I think that's a very, very powerful card, very unfair card. So definitely put them in tier 1 just because of Zeus, pretty much. Honestly, that card is insane. In fact, the deck could put multiple materials under it to give it multiple uses. It's just absolutely crazy. Next is Drytron. So this is the deck that that recently came out. I definitely think it is a tier 1 contender. Some of the generic ritual cards like pre-prep, preparation of rites and stuff, it's just insane. Like all the generic ritual cards are absolutely insane. Like it's crazy how many pluses they give you, and especially paired with something like Cyber Agent Ben 10 where you just keep getting searches and stuff. You can also search stuff like Artifact Landseal, you can search Vandy's Ruler. It's absolutely crazy. You can tech so much stuff in the ritual deck, and the only real thing in my opinion it loses to is Droll, and like I haven't seen many people catching on to Droll yet. Of course, I think it's going to change this format, but if it doesn't get hit by Droll, it can definitely play through like 1, 2, maybe even 3 interruptions. So I personally think Drytron has a lot of potential to be very high tier 1. And if the format evolves enough, like maybe even tier 0.5. But for now, I'm going to put it in tier 1. Next is Eldritch. So Pure Eldritch isn't really a deck anymore. Eldritch is kind of just splashed around with like Zeus and Buster Blader stuff. So I'm going to stick it in tier 1.5. Eldritch engine is still very, very good, especially when we're slowing down in this format. I definitely think it's like close to high tier 1.5 because you just get such a good grind game after seeing just like one Scarlet Sanguine. Like that alone just gets you a play every single turn because you Sanguine, bring an Eldritch, and Sanguine set like a Conk or something, and then now you have a loop between Eldritch and your Eldritch traps, which is just really, really powerful. Eldritch's effect is still very, very good. Of course, it can out something like Zeus. Excuse me. And if you're somehow able to get it onto the board, it runs over Herald of Perfection. So yeah, I definitely think the Eldritch engine is high tier 1.5. Next is going to be Dogmatica, the Dogmatica engine. I'm gonna put this in like low tier 1.5. It's still very, very good engine, but it has to heavily rely on the other engine or engines that you're playing. So if you play Dogmatica with like invoked only, it's gonna like, in my opinion, be in like lower tier 2 because the invoked engine, while somewhat consistent, it just doesn't have enough power output. But if you put it with something like Zeus plus Eldritch, you can put like these 3 together, Zodiac, Eldritch, Dogmaticas, or something. I definitely think Dogmaticas has great potential. If you put it with any other like pile deck, like the Buster deck, Shaddol, stuff like that, I definitely think Dogmaticas will still be very good, of course, because Nadir Servant, like Ecclesia itself, like searching a pop 2 and or Fleur de Lis is obviously very, very good, but the Nadir Servant just makes it absolutely insane. Plus, with a card like Dogmatica Maximus, that definitely has a lot of potential, even though it's really high risk in this format. It's good to keep in mind that the Dogmaticas are going to be pretty prevalent in this format, in my opinion. Nexus Virtual Worlds, definitely tier 1 contender, not much more to say about that. VFD didn't get hit, and now that Linkross out of the format, they have a little less meta, combo competition to deal with. Of course, against like control decks, they can also sort of grind with their trap card and Nianyans, but against combo decks, this deck just thrives with VFD. This card is absolutely insane, and I think I put it higher than Drytrons. Like, this is very close to being tier 0.5 in my opinion. If the format devolves to a point where it's like that, definitely could be tier 0.5 in my opinion. Next is Altergeist. Even though they have Multi-Faker at 3, I just feel like the deck has some very, very large inherent issues with it. The fact that some of your Altergeist cards just do absolutely nothing if you draw them by themselves. So like, if you draw Marionette or just like a bunch of hand traps, it's actually not even that good because you're just setting a protocol. At most, that's 1 negate. If you draw like Silk by itself, it does nothing. If you draw Manifestation by itself, it's nothing. But of course, still not like too terrible of a deck. I think it's like low tier 2 in my opinion. I could be wrong, but like I just don't think Altergeist personally is that good. Next is Skystrikers. So yes, this deck is still a thing. With triple Widow Anchor, triple Kagari, obviously the deck still has some inherent consistency issues because they don't have a card like Engage. So now if you don't see a monster, you're just playing a very, very slow deck. So like, I'm actually just gonna put this in Rogue. I don't think Skystrikers is that good, honestly. The fact that they have to use like a lot of other cards in tandem with drawing like an already good hand with like Ray, Widow Anchor, stuff like that. You have to draw cards like either Red Eyes Fusion if you're playing that, or Mystic Mine if you're playing that. So I just don't think Skystrikers is that good personally. Next is Infernoble Knights. So yeah, they lost Smoke Grenade and they lost Linkross. But I still think this deck has a great potential. I'm gonna just put it in high tier 1.5, low tier 1. The deck is by no means dead. It still has some very, very powerful plays. But the fact that I lost Smoke Grenade, that was the one thing this deck did like unfairly that pretty much no other deck could do, was abuse Smoke Grenade. Like, Smoke Grenade just gave you perfect hand information, ripped a card out of your opponent's hand. It was just absolutely insane. But now that you lost that and Linkross, I just think it's going to be a little problematic for the deck. It's going to lose some of its power. Of course, like I said, not dead at all. I just also think it's going to drop off as people try to switch to different decks that didn't get hit by the ban list. So I think it's going to see less representation, and thus that's why I'm putting it in tier 1.5. Next is Dragon Link. So they lost their Linkross and their Dragon Buster Destruction Sword, which was the thing that they did unfairly. But Dragon Link, I think, is definitely not dead as well. I put it in like high tier 1.5 along with Infernoble Knights, only because as some people begin switching to other meta decks that weren't hit, so like these 3 that I have up here, I think that Dragon Link will fall off a little bit. Obviously, still not dead because you can summon a card like Amorphage Goliath from your deck with Hieratic Seals, and then protect it with something like Harbinger if you choose to go that route. You're still able to abuse cards like Romulus and Hulk. But now that you're missing Linkross, may be a little more difficult to make some of those plays. So, yeah, just keep in mind, this is just my opinion. I think if this deck still remains like just as represented, it could easily be low tier 1. But I just think that these 2 decks will become less representative in the meta as people switch to different decks. So I put them in tier 1.5. Phantom Knights, I think this deck honestly is insane. The fact that it gets Recovery and Graveyard every single turn, can make Dragoon, it can make Dark Requiem, I believe, in its combo, and that's like 3 monster negates in and of itself, plus the Fog Blades and stuff. Like, this card is just insane. You're also able to play like the Burning Abyss cards in there and utilize like the grind game of Graph and Seer, and of course cards like Levier and Torn Scales are just absolutely insane, make this deck pretty crazy. So I think it's definitely tier 1. The only problem I really see with it right now, it loses to a card like Lancia. If you get Lancia, your plays kind of just have to stop like past like making a Dragoon, which is just a little unfortunate. But I still think that this deck has lots of potential, and I think it's one of the meta contenders in this format. Next is Salamangreats. So Salamangreats I have not seen a lot of, but I think the deck is still not too terrible. It's definitely not dead. It had anything hit recently. It's just like a very, very okay control deck at best. Like, I'd probably put it in the same level as Altergeist, really. Both of them have their issues with like consistency and power. But like, of course, once they get going, they're still quite decent at making a good grind game. So I think Salamangreats and Altergeist fall in like low tier 2 rogue status, in my opinion. Not much else I have to say about that. Not many people are playing Salamangreats, obviously, because it's such an old deck. They want to play something new. And yeah, so that's why I'm going to put it in tier 2. Finally, Unchained. So this is like a rogue deck that I've been hearing about, seeing it around on YouTube quite a bit, and I've tested it out a little. Its grind game is quite good because all of their monsters float, for example. So if your opponent can't really out them in a way other than battle or card effects, you're just going to be able to endlessly float and just keep getting your pluses and slowly build up advantage with your traps and stuff. And for that reason, I'm going to put it in very, very low tier 2. I think they can play cards like Torrential Tribute and stuff, and as you know, Torrential Tribute plus Solemn Strike pretty much breaks any meta board. You Torrential them, they negate with their monster, you strike, and you get plus off for your guy while they lose their whole board. They're also able to play a card like Pot of Extravagance, and even then, I still don't think the deck is really that bad, even when you draw only like one Unchained monster, because your opponent's really not expecting like floaters in this format. So if you even if you set it, you can slowly float down to make sure you don't die. And you can also combine it with other archetypes like Dogmatica or Eldritch. So Unchained, keep this in the back of your mind. Of course, I don't think it's going to be like tier 1 or anything, but still something that it's very good to consider. Keep in the back of your mind. It's also very, very good budget deck if you don't even play Extravagance in it, as a side note. So yeah, that's gonna do it for all the decks I have here. I know I couldn't cover every single deck, but off the top of my mind, I can't really think of any other serious like meta contenders right now that'd be like tier 1, tier 1.5 that I'm missing. You guys can let me know in the comments what deck you think would fit that. But like other rogue decks, tier 2 decks like Madolche and stuff, they're still definitely not bad. You can still play them, of course. Math Mechs, Pendulums, I think like fall into like tier 2 in my opinion, at least. I could be wrong. Pendulums, especially, I know it has a very, very dedicated fan base, so maybe it will see like more play in the future and like be tier 1.5 or something. But I just think the deck has a lot of inherent issues with it. But yeah, that's gonna do it for this video. Just remember, guys, this was my opinion. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Sorry. And yeah, tell me what you think of the tier list, what you would change, what you would add, stuff like that. And yeah, that's gonna do it for me, guys, today. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I will see you guys soon. Thanks for watching.